people in, so we can go ahead and get started. Our Deputy Director of Small Business will be introducing our Small Business Commission President, Amelia.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. And thank you so much, Sharky Laguana, for joining us today. Thank you also to everyone who has joined in for this City Hall check-in. I'm the Deputy Director for Small Business Initiatives at the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. And my name is Amelia, if you don't know me. And just a reminder, end of today, 3 o'clock, we've got our open office hours if anyone wants to join in and chat about anything or something we picked up on today. But allow me to introduce, without further ado, Mr. Sharky Laguana. He is the president of the Small Business Commission in San Francisco. The mission of the Small Business Commission with the Office of Small Business and the Small Business Assistance Center is to foster, promote, and retain small businesses in the city and county of San Francisco. More plainly, this is the only commission and organization that's explicit priority is to represent the needs and thoughts of small business in San Francisco and works towards making sure that San Francisco is the best place to become a small business and to be a small business someday. Sharky himself, has a very San Francisco story of coming here with nothing and building something amazing. He is the founder and CEO of Bandigo, a company that rents passenger vans throughout the US. Bandigo specializes in providing passenger vans to professional touring musicians, as well as families, corporations, churches, and governments. He also founded Campago, which rents unique camper vans out of San Francisco and operating all over the place. Challenging year, certainly, for that industry. And I'm sure, I can clearly say if anybody understands what it's like to be a small business in this environment, it is Sharky, which makes him an incredible advocate for the small businesses of San Francisco, as well as with his involvement in the American Car Rental Association. So this is somebody who knows small business up and down and certainly took a crash course in what it is to be anything from a retail business to a restaurant in San Francisco when he was appointed by Mayor London Breed to the president of Small Business Commission. So that's a brief overview of who Sharky is, but we'd love to hear more from you now about what's going on at City Hall, what's going on in the small business world, and anything else you'd like to share. Thank you, Sharky.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Amelia, and thank you as well, Emily, and thanks to the Chamber, who I have to say have been an incredible advocate and friend and partner to the small business community. And it's been great to work with all of you on the very many projects that we've been working on. As a minor note of correction, I was not appointed to be president. I was just appointed to the commission. To be president, you have to be elected by your fellow commissioners, and it's a one-year term. My term started January 7th of 2020, so it was about 2 or 3 weeks before the pandemic began. My first act as president was passing a resolution requesting that the mayor and the board of supervisors work together as efficiently as possible to help the small business community get through the pandemic. And it was very clear, even in middle of February, that this was going to be a very challenging environment for all of us. So with that, I think maybe for the benefit of folks that are not familiar with the work of the commission, we were created by an act of voters who recognized that the path to being an elected official does not often run through being a small business owner. Typically, most of the folks that you see that are elected officials have a background in law or nonprofits or public service work, come up through the trenches of government work. And those are all sort of worthy, noble paths. But what often happens is we get elected leaders, and not many have experience running or operating a small business. And so voters recognize that this is a potential blind spot. And so they created the Small Business Commission. We are a chartered commission. So the city has chartered and non-chartered commissions. So non-chartered commissions don't have quite the same heft as chartered commissions do. And the point and purpose of the Small Business Commission is to advocate for small business. And how I viewed the role and what I think the role is, we don't have any actual statutory authority. We can't pass any rules or laws. All we can do is provide advice to policymakers and decision makers. So the way I have viewed this position is that our job is to give the best possible advice that we can. And in order to do that, we are very careful about our credibility and very careful about the advice that we give. We try to, or I try to, be supportive of all of our elected officials and try and help all of them succeed. My working theory is if we're doing our job right, everybody gets reelected, and everybody gets reelected because the voters of San Francisco are well served. I think historically, over the past couple decades, small business has not been paid much attention to, and I'd say that the view of many small business owners is our relationship with City Hall and government has not been a healthy one. So one of the silver linings in the pandemic is there's this opportunity to reset that relationship. And so one of the things the commission has really been focused on during my term as president over the past year is really getting policymakers to see small business as part of the solution and part of our city, and something that needs to be protected and helped and encouraged rather than obstructed and treated as a piggy bank, which is only good for withdrawals and never deposits. So very gently and very encouragingly, we have tried to reset attitudes around small business and get policymakers to realize that small business employs half of all workers in San Francisco, that we disproportionately employ very vulnerable communities, immigrants, women, undocumented workers, that all of our policymakers care very deeply about, and that a robust economy will be one with a very strong small business sector, and it leaves the city in a much stronger place economically because we're not vulnerable to the vicissitudes of a single company having an up year or a down year, or a single sector having an up year or a down year. I think it's always healthy for cities to have a diverse economy. And there is nothing really more diverse than small business. I'll also note that for the past 2 decades, the fastest growing sector in the US economy has been women-owned small businesses, past 2 decades. You know, it's an important pathway to economic security for both women and minorities. And as such, I think is really something that needs to be encouraged. Lately, the mantra for myself has been San Francisco should not just be a good and easy place to operate a small business. It should be the easiest place in America to operate a small business. We definitely have a long way to go there. And I recognize that, and I think our policymakers are increasingly recognizing that. So before I talk about what our mission and goals over the next year are going to be, I think for the benefit of people that aren't familiar with our work, I thought it'd be worthwhile to talk about what we've done over the past year since I became chair of the commission. If you go to sfosb.com/policy, or maybe it's sfosb.org, sorry. Let me just double check on that. Of course, I have too many bookmarks here. It is, I apologize, SFOSB for San Francisco Office of Small Business.org/policy. Our policy output since the pandemic has started is been greater than the past 10 years combined. So I'm very proud of the work we have done rising up and addressing to the pandemic. I'm very proud of my colleagues on the commission and the work that we've put in to make sure that the city is doing everything that I can. So just to sort of recap what we've done since March or April of when the pandemic started, March of 2020. One of the first things we did was we recognized that there was going to be a need for federal relief and stimulus, including more equitable distribution of PPP funds, which was a brand new concept in March, support for essential workers. And we recognized as well there was going to be problems with mortgage and commercial rent relief. So our first sort of big project, we delivered a letter to the mayor and board of supervisors, and we made more than 30 recommendations for federal relief and stimulus. And that was delivered in April of 2020. Intriguing, I think every one of those 30 recommendations still stands up today. I'm very proud of that request we made. I thought it showed a lot of foresight. In May, just a few weeks later, we made close to 60 separate recommendations to the newly formed Economic Recovery Task Force. I was honored to serve on the task force as well. And we made a number of land use recommendations, which the ERTF co-chairs reported back to us were quite helpful in their deliberations. One of the key recommendations we made is that public space, including streets and plazas, should be repurposed for outdoor business use. As we saw that shortly afterwards, the mayor introduced a shared spaces proposal, and I thought that that was very well done and very fast and enabled a lot of businesses to stay alive. I don't want to take any credit for what the mayor did, but I'm pleased that we were all thinking along the same lines. In July, we urged support for ensuring that shared spaces would be successful. These recommendations were later adopted by the Board of Supervisors. Gordon Marr literally just took our resolution with our permission and gratitude and brought it before the board. One thing I will note that was in our resolution that did not make the board's resolution was we suggested that shared spaces be extended at least 3 years and should be made permanent. That didn't make it through, and we'll get to that in a minute. Last month, December, we made 50 more suggestions to the mayor and board of supervisors for additional federal relief. We wanted to make sure we got our licks in on the stimulus 4.0 package. And we highlighted future and emerging concerns like commercial bankruptcy reform, aid to restaurants, and more. I do want to say that most of these ideas did not come from us. They came from you, the small business community. And we listened very closely to all of you and did our best to curate and turn it into policy proposals that our policymakers would be willing to hear. And I think the ongoing work is making sure that the city prioritizes us. So recently we've had a string of I think successes. We're finally starting to build up some momentum here. And thanks to Supervisor Haney, We were able to make several different suggestions, which have been turned into either ordinances or resolutions, one of which is that shared spaces should be permanent. That's something I feel very strongly about. It's something I think that will benefit the city over the long haul. I think it will help us in the recovery, but it also, you know, when I talk about shared spaces, I like to talk about the 3 C's. Shared spaces are good for commerce, they are good for cleanliness, and they are good for, I forget what the other C, of course, I forgot what the other C is, commerce, cleanliness, and community. You know, I think it's great to walk down these streets like Valencia Street or Grant Street or Irving Street and see people out and dining and kids playing. It's great to see folks outside. I think that's something that San Francisco previously did not have. I think it really benefits the city as a whole, and I don't think we've even begun to tap into the potential that shared spaces offers us. You know, when we think about all the extraordinary artists and craftsmen, you know, when people go to Burning Man, we see these incredible designs. I want to see that creativity applied to these outdoor spaces, and I really want to see a lot of really remarkable artwork and design brought out into the open. And I think that that will in turn help drive people wanting to visit the city. Tourism, I think, you know, we tend to think about the city as being a very tech city, but we, in the process of that, we lose just how big of an impact tourism is for our city economically. And that's another reason I think our city has struggled a little bit more than others during the pandemic, because we've lost all that tourist revenue and income. So I think if we can do things to turn up the magic knob a couple more notches, I think that really will help us quite a bit. Other resolutions that were introduced, we're going to be taking a close look at the next round of budgeting. Small business has historically not played a very aggressive role with respect to the city's budget. I do think that needs to change, and we need to start thinking about how we're going to address budgeting going forward. We were successful in persuading Supervisor Haney to provide additional resources for our live entertainment venues. Those venues have been closed since March of 2020 and have had no opportunity to open at all. And it's hard to think of a business or sector that has been more set back by the pandemic. Many of our venues have closed. Memorably, Slim's is closed, and I believe there's been a few others. The ones that are remaining are hanging by a thread. So carving out some special help and assistance for them, I think, is really important, because the evidence shows that live entertainment venues, for every dollar that's spent in a live entertainment venue, $12 is generated in economic activity for the community. So they deliver a really good return in terms of the economic impact. Never mind the fact that culture is the heart and soul of San Francisco, and I think music has always played a very central role in the history of our city, and we really want to make sure that those cultural institutions survive. The other thing that we introduced is a resolution that any incoming money to the city in terms of discretionary funds, that small business should be prioritized. So I think we all know that elected officials have a tendency, when money becomes available, to put that money forward towards local pet projects and things that are of importance to core members of their coalition. But I do think that we need to organize our collective mindset around the fact that the small business sector has really shouldered most of the burden of the protecting the public health in terms of closing businesses and making sure that we keep our pandemic numbers low. And accordingly, I think that the city has an obligation to prioritize small business when federal discretionary funds become available. So this resolution would basically be a statement by the board that they intend to prioritize small business as federal funds become available, which I think we should all strongly support. Finally, one of the things that has been lacking with respect to how funds are allocated and distributed has been a cohesive plan for how we're going to get our small businesses back on their feet. So we encourage the formation of an advisory committee made up of the controller's office, the economist's office, mayor's office, somebody from one of our supervisors, probably the budget chair, which is Supervisor Haney now, and the Small Business Commission, and I think one or two others, to come up a small working group to come up with a cohesive and coherent plan to get small businesses back on their feet in San Francisco. So this is kind of inside baseball, and I think a lot of people won't be paying attention to this, but this is actually a really big deal. Now that we have President Biden and Vice President Harris, who is from San Francisco, and we have a Senate and a House that are all controlled by the same party, I think it's likely that we're going to see some substantial federal aid coming in. And when that aid comes in, I'd like to make sure that we're not spending that money blindly, and that we have a plan that's going to maximize the return on our investment, and really, in particular, help those communities and businesses that have been hurting the most, particularly our outer-lying neighborhoods that have had the highest amount of job loss and business closures. Also, recently, Supervisor Stephanie introduced a ordinance to eliminate registration fees and refund those fees for 2020, given that many of these businesses were not able to be open at all. That's very well received. And last week, Mayor Breed introduced a proposal to have loans and grants up to $62 million, which is the biggest aid plan that we've seen since the pandemic started. I was delighted to work closely with Assessor Chu, now City Administrator Chu, and Office of Economic Workforce Development Director Joaquin Torres in connecting them with the folks behind the California Recovery Rebuilding Fund and getting the balls started on that. So it's been an incredibly, astoundingly busy year. I think one thing people think about, I get this a lot. Oh, you're part of the city. Oh, you're on the city payroll. Of course you're going to say whatever you're saying. I think it's important to note that everybody that serves on the Small Business Commission is an unpaid volunteer. There are no perks. We don't even get a parking spot back in the days when we actually had hearings. It's the perk is the joy of being able to help others and commit yourself to trying to make a better city. And I do have to say, on a personal level, this year has been completely and totally very shitty. My business serves the music industry, and there basically is no music industry and hasn't been since March. I've struggled with my own business and struggled to figure out how to survive. But the silver lining for me has actually been serving on the commission and serving as chair of the commission. I can't tell you how good it feels to engage with something where you have the possibility of making good and positive change. And honestly, that has really gone a long way towards keeping my personal sanity alive. And I would encourage anybody that is struggling or is feeling down about their personal situation with respect to the local business environment. Now's a great opportunity to volunteer and engage at whatever level that you can. The work is incredibly rewarding and really does a lot to take your mind off of things and gives you something else to think about. And I've really appreciated having that opportunity. So going forward, we have a challenging year in front of us. I can't say as I sit here with absolute certainty that I will be chair, because our elections are coming up next Monday, and the chair is elected by the commission. But assuming I am reelected as chair, then I can speak a little bit about what our priorities are going to be for the year ahead. So first and foremost, the mayor has indicated that she intends for shared spaces to become a permanent program, which is obviously something I completely support. There's a lot of work around drafting the legislation around that, and much of that work has already begun. And I've participated in a number of working groups and in conversations around that, as has the Chamber and Council of District Merchants and Golden Gate Restaurant Association and other activists and advocates in the small business community. So that's going to be very exciting, because that's a really big opportunity to change our city for the better, and I'm really excited about it. And I'm really excited that one of our commissioners, Manny Yacudiel, has just been appointed to the MTA board and just had his first meeting there on Monday. So I think as we get more and more small businesses representatives throughout these commissions, I think we'll start to see more coherence in our advocacy work. And so that's a really important program to be working on. This Monday is going to be pretty action-packed. We're having, from Department of Public Health, we're having Dr. Phillips, who took over Dr. Aragon's role with respect to DPH policy towards small businesses. I think this will be an opportunity to learn more about the thinking behind closures of indoor and outdoor dining, and where we stand with respect to that, and when possibly we can expect reopening. There's obviously a lot of very strong feelings about that, quite understandably. I think most small businesses feel that we get and understand that there's a very urgent and serious public health concern. And I think my point of view on this is if you're going to ask folks to close, then the least you can do is find a way to help them stay alive. That's the bare minimum. I think getting some understanding from Dr. Phillips around what her analysis of the situation is, how DPH is processing the numbers, how they're thinking about transmission and the epidemiology of the pandemic will be really important later on in terms of that advocacy work for what our community needs. We'll also, I've invited SFPD and our DA to come and do a joint presentation to us about this problem that we've seen of a fairly significant uptick in break-ins and vandalism of small businesses. I think anybody that is here on this webinar is probably well aware that there is a lot of very strong feelings on both sides about how criminal justice policy is being handled. And yet, I think it's important for, at the end of the day, my perspective is there needs to be a little bit less finger pointing and blaming and a little bit more bridge building, figuring out where we have common ground and figuring out where there's opportunities. Because the bottom line is that it is beyond insult to injury to ask a business to close, then have it get broken into repeatedly to the point that it can't afford broken window insurance anymore, and then have the business put up boards to protect the windows they can no longer afford to replace, which then get tagged with graffiti, which then get fined by the DPW. That seems ridiculous and outrageous to me. And I think we need to start looking at this problem holistically. First and foremost, I think the most sane criminal justice policy would be how do we prevent crimes from happening in the first place, so that we don't have to have as many discussions about what to do or how to prosecute them. It'd be better if we could get in front of this. So we'll also be looking at how we can get our streets cleaner. We've already had a hearing with DPW about this to learn more about their processes and procedures. Our new DPW director has many years of experience and is very capable and welcome to the DPW and city family as a leader. So we're very excited to see his leadership style. And I think pretty soon here, voters requested that there be a DPW commission. So I would like to see small business representation on that commission, and we'll be advocating for that as well. Finally, the work continues as well at both the state and the federal level. City commissions are not allowed to advocate directly with state and federal governments. We couldn't, for instance, send a letter to state elected officials making our recommendations. We couldn't send a letter to our senators or Congress people making requests and recommendations. But what we can do is we can send a memo to the mayor, who is our authorized representative to the state and federal governments. And I will say that the mayor has, I think, been a great partner and a great ally to small business. And she has taken our recommendations very seriously and adopted most of them, to her credit. And I expect that we will have a lot more recommendations to make over the next year to come. One thing that's really popped up on my radar is that PPP expenses are, there was a mistake in the initial federal drafting. They intended to make those PPP expenses deductible. They failed to include language ensuring that, and as a result, the IRS said, "Well, no, you can't deduct those expenses if the loan was forgiven." So the federal government came and said, "No, we don't want to tax the PPP loan," which is effectively what that would do. And so they said, "No, those expenses, you can still deduct those from your taxes." It was great the federal government said that, but California has not gone along with that yet. And so I think there needs to be a push to harmonize the state's tax rules with the federal government's tax rules with respect to PPP. So we'll be pushing hard for that. And finally, and this is my last little update, and this is also, I'm going to close with this because this is one of our most important projects. The Small Business Commission partnered with the University of San Francisco to create a survey. of small businesses. And the reason we did this was that it has been very frustrating as we do our work that there is little, if any, information with respect to our small businesses. It is, we know roughly how many businesses registered, but we don't know anything about the demographics. We don't know how they are doing. We don't know how PPP has been utilized. We know very little outside of an impact survey that the Shared Spaces did. We know very little about how Shared Spaces has been working out for folks. We don't know very much about optimism or pessimism in the small business community, not at a broad statistical level. So we've created the survey. We worked with the head of economics department for University of San Francisco. We spent probably a good couple months drafting the survey, and now we have it in multiple languages. I'm posting the link to the survey in the chat. So it is absolutely critical that we get as many small businesses as possible to complete the survey. And the reason is there's no other survey that's looking at small business with this level of granularity. And we already have a number of policymakers who have indicated that they're going to be looking at this survey very closely in order to make decisions about what public policy should be going forward. So I think having a really good and clear snapshot of the health of the small business community is going to be very important for making sure that we also get good policy going forward. So those of you that operate small businesses, I'd strongly encourage you in the strongest possible way to complete the survey, and also please pass on the link to your other friends that are small businesses operators, because it's very important that we get some improvement here. So so with that, I will I guess jump over to the Q&A. I think that's the update in the long term over here. And Emily, I got the Q&A open, so like you don't have to read the questions unless you really want to.
Go for it. I'll just say thank you really quickly on behalf of the chamber, and I'm sure everyone here. I don't think everyone knows it's a volunteer position, so thank you very much for your time. And I think it was a very important note that you made, that the diversity that small business brings to San Francisco. So thank you again for all your work, for making sure that it's easy to open a business in San Francisco. So with that, I still have some questions in the Q&A.
Yes. Okay. So Clifford Waldeck says, today downtown San Francisco is predominantly empty. As the city reopens, what can people like me, who are chamber activists, do to help kickstart and advocate for downtown vitality, help build the buzz, so to speak? Downtown is really ground zero for the difficulties that San Francisco is facing right now. We've seen a dramatic drop in sales tax revenue, well over 50%, north of 80%, I believe, in the downtown area. We have seen a massive wave of closures. And the reasons for this are really self-evident. We have a whole bunch of tall office buildings that used to hold tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of workers. And those workers aren't there. They're not coming in. And that is foot traffic that our small businesses need in order to survive. And without that foot traffic, they don't really have a sustainable business model. And so we're seeing a lot of businesses close and just don't have a sustainable path forward downtown. The ones, there are still some that are doing their best to hang on, but it is, to call it a challenging environment would be an understatement. So I think any economic recovery plan that isn't centered on revitalizing downtown is a flawed and would be an enormous mistake to not put that front and center in our recovery plans. First and foremost, I mean, it's self-evident, but I'll just say it. The best path out of this is to get everybody vaccinated as soon as possible. And so we've really got to do everything we can to expedite vaccinations at scale, and have to pick up the pace enormously and tremendously. And I think we all have to be supportive and aligned around the mass vaccination sites, and making sure that everybody has the resources they need to make sure that those vaccinations happen as quickly as possible. We're not going to have a vibrant downtown so long as there is an active pandemic. Second, I think we're going to really have to work hard to make downtown attractive. Right now, there are many businesses that have, chosen to leave. We've seen Twitter has offered up a lot of their space as sublease. I think Oracle has also chosen to leave their downtown headquarters. There's quite a few other businesses as well. Pinterest decided to not proceed with a large building development, and there's many more that I can't recall. So, I think we're definitely climbing uphill in terms of replacing all that foot traffic that office space was previously used. I think we also need to recognize that there are new trends and paradigms in how we do business. I think a lot of people are working from home, and I don't think I think a significant percentage of those people are not going to be coming back. They will continue to work from home. So I think we need to recognize that that's a trend, and we're going to have to really rethink how downtown spaces are utilized, and what kind of opportunities are available to them. So, what comes up for me is, I think first and foremost, we need to rethink planning around the use of downtown spaces, and we need to create a lot more flexibility, because I think there's going to have to be a lot of experimentation to figure out what works in this new normal that is emerging. And I don't think it's helpful to the city, or it's helpful to business to be over-regimented with respect to our planning codes. So creating a lot more flexibility, I think, will enable folks to try things and see what works. And hopefully we can build on our successes and start to draw people back in. Two, obviously, I think we need to encourage office workers to come back. That's not going to happen until they feel safe. But once they feel safe, I think that there's a lot of levers that the city can pull to make it compelling for folks to come back and work downtown again. And I think just foot traffic will help our small businesses probably more than anything else. One thing I do want to say, I see a lot of people talk about shop local, or which is a wonderful concept, and sort of a charity approach to small business. I'm a washed up musician, and I remember when Napster came out, that there were some in the music community that thought all this money that we were losing from CD sales to streaming, that we could somehow recover this money through asking for donations and tip jars and that sort of thing. And I'll just say that I'm just very deeply skeptical about charity ever coming anywhere near in the universe of replacing genuine commerce and activity. So I don't view charity, while it might be helpful in trying as a bridge to recovery, it's not a solution. And I tend to disregard solutions that are sort of predicated on folks donating or giving money to small businesses and sort of subsidizing them or propping them up. In order for small businesses to succeed, they need to have a compelling business proposition. There has to be real value to the customer, and folks have to want to choose to be there. And so, I'll say that the one thing that small business can offer that the Amazons and eBays and other e-commerces of the world cannot is experience. You can't experience an incredible evening with human beings and eat delicious food. You can't download that. You can't buy that from Shopify.com. That can only happen in real life. And so I think for downtown to really come back, we need to turn up the knob on real life experiences and propositions. And I think now with all this emerging empty space, which I think is at an all-time high, at least in recent memory, I think enabling arts organizations and cultural organizations and different uses for these spaces that'll help draw people in, even as just a short-term fix, just getting more people downtown, I think will do a lot to help support the local small businesses and kind of get the flywheel spinning again on the downtown environment. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but it's an incredibly challenging not really opportunity, a problem with respect to downtown. I don't think there's any one answer. I think we're going to have to probably throw a zillion different things at the wall and see what sticks. But we got to start that work right away because there's so many small businesses downtown that depend on it. So the next question is from Matthew Haggerty. What are some ways that San Francisco residents can support the live music industry without actually attending concerts during the pandemic? Oh boy, I wish there was I wish there was some meaningful way to support the live music industry. Again, going back to what I said, yeah, the GoFundMe's are helpful, don't get me wrong. This music recovery fund that the commission worked on with Supervisor Haney to recover, venue recovery fund, we're hoping to raise $1 million, which will hopefully be matched by the city, and then we'll be able to help support some of these live music industry venues. That'll be meaningful, but there's really no replacement for having people go to shows, having people be together. And so it's kind of the same thing as downtown. We've just got to get everybody vaccinated as quickly as possible. We've got to get on the other side of this pandemic so that we can start to rebuild and recover. I think just like with downtown, there's levers that the city can pull with tax incentives, with removing fees and other onerous obligations. One of the things that I've spoken about with supervisors that I think gets lost, and we've talked about this, and I think we're going to be talking about this in the commission, is administrative burden. So, small businesses, they get sort of henpecked to death with these little things that they got to apply for and register for, and then fees and fines. And there's been some attempt to kind of bring all these together with the unified business fee, license fee. But between HCSO, which by the way is another thing that the commission's going to be taking a very close look at in the months ahead, there's $400 million sitting in a fund that was paid into by small businesses that has not been distributed to employees. That's deeply concerning at a time when we have to fight for $2 or $3 million in fee reductions. So I think, we need to do what we can to make it easier on small businesses and reduce that administrative burden. People should not have to spend hours and hours just doing essentially busy work. Everything needs to be streamlined. My mantra again and again, over and over, San Francisco should be the easiest city in America to operate a small business. And by easiest, I mean easiest. It should be like slipping into a hot tub. It should be so easy that you're like, I can't wait to do that again. And it should be encouraging and warm and welcome and receptive. And I'll note too that that has benefits as well from an equity perspective. Somebody like myself, when I moved to San Francisco in '91, I was homeless. It was probably 10 years before I made more than minimum wage. For me, starting a small business was a miracle, and really was the only way that I'd ever be financially self-sufficient. I can't think, it pains me to think of how many talented people out there that would be incredible entrepreneurs, but they can't do it because we've made it too damn fucking hard. We need to really make it a lot easier so that these people can participate. And then I think, you know, you'll actually see a lot more diversity in our small businesses. I mean, one thing I've seen in certain corners and sectors of the city, they'll complain, oh, the small business people, you know, like, you know, it seems like they're all like white techie people. By the way, I'm not a techie person. And I'm like, well, yeah, you've made a system that only wealthy people can get through, which, you know, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, let's try making it easy, and then let's talk about and see who opens small businesses. So that'd be great. So Voss, hi Voss. SF and many major cities are getting a lot of bad PR these days, i.e. unsafe streets, street people, vacant buildings, and lack of street life. Do you think SF needs a new PR campaign to demonstrate the city and businesses are clean, safe, and fun again? Oh boy. So I think the first part, before we launch a PR campaign to demonstrate that they're clean, safe, and fun again, we need to make them clean, safe, and fun again. We have some work to do there, and I think we can all agree on that. I don't think there's any dispute that our streets are not as clean or as safe or as fun as they could or should be. And so we have some work to do there. But once we have made some progress there, then yes, I think a new PR campaign would be important. Frankly, I think a PR campaign around many of the issues vexing us would be welcome. I think the city has at times suffered from a lack of communication, both with small business and the public. I think part of the dynamic, and I've talked about this on Twitter recently, is the city, our government has for many years had an attitude towards business that has verged on hostility. And I think that dynamic needs to fundamentally change, and we need to reset our mindsets and attitudes, because our local businesses are where all the jobs come from, and those jobs support people with very low incomes and who are without those jobs, very housing insecure and food insecure. A quote I saw recently is that most gentrification happens during recessions, not during economic upticks. And I think that's very interesting and very true, because it's during a recession that the most vulnerable people lose their jobs, and then they can't afford the rent anymore. So I think we need to be very diligent in being welcoming and receptive. We've all seen the great job that Miami has done, basically cleaning our clocks and picking off our businesses left and right. I think we could do a lot more towards being competitive with Miami. I think we have a lot more to offer than Miami does. We just need to get on the right side of that equation. And so last question, and then Emily's got a question for me. Given small businesses are financially strapped beyond the media coverage on this topic in the news, what more can the media do to help small businesses? The media is itself a business model. And that business model is to tell stories and convey narratives. And, I think the burden lies with the small business community to interact with that business model in a way that's productive. So we have to tell those stories. We have to convey those narratives. We have to put a face on the problem. We have to get people to realize it's not just about the plight of small business owners. It's also about the plight of small business workers. This should cut across all party lines. This should be beyond bipartisan. This should be something that everybody is aligned on and ready to get behind. But really, the burden is on us to tell the story. We can't expect media to think up the storylines for us or create the narratives for us. It's on us to find ways to tell the public and share those stories. One other question here, I didn't see it in the chat. Robin Jordan says some of the challenges are with the Port of San Francisco, entirely separate from the city. Small business commission involved in advocating with the port as well. Not at to date. We haven't had much to do with the port. I know the port has their own commission. Robin, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and everybody else is welcome to send me emails as well. And I'm happy to learn more about what's happening at the port and whether there's a role there for the commission to play. I know they have a commission that serves them, but I think, yeah, you know, it sounds like perhaps there's more that we could or should be doing there. I want to learn more about that, and if there's a way that we can interact in a constructive and positive way, I will. Okay, Emily, you get the last question.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for all those great questions. In just the last couple minutes we have, I was wondering, I know November seems like a long time ago now, but with the passing of Prop H, what are your thoughts around its implementation, execution? How on track are we?
Great. So I know the mayor has ordered all of the department heads to draft a plan that they were supposed to come up with a plan to start executing on Prop H within 30 days. The commission will, in short order, be having those department heads come and present to us on what those plans are. So to refresh everybody, Prop H, kind of the core feature of Prop H is that there will, anybody that's applying for a permit will get their permit, an up or down on their permit within 30 days. Previously, it took an average of 10 months. What the fuck? So that's insanity, and we can't have that. So we need a 30-day permit turnaround. It also created more flexibility for restaurants so that they could do the kinds of things they need to survive, some more flexibility around zoning and our commercial corridors. I think Prop H is an important step in the direction that we need to be going. I worked really hard on helping to pass Prop H, wrote editorials, presented to neighborhood groups, did dozens of interviews. So I'm very intimately familiar with the benefits and that Prop H offers, and fully intend to make sure that our city departments are accountable for making sure that Prop H is implemented. I will say that it is just a step in the right direction, and that a lot more work needs to be done, that we need a lot more flexibility with respect to our local businesses, and that's the key work, I think, going forward. And we also, I think, need a lot more simplification so that business owners are not buried in paperwork. So I want to thank Emily and Amelia again for hosting me, and the chamber as well. The chamber, I will say, behind the scenes, they have a small business policy team that are very active all over the place. Amelia is an incredible leader and very thoughtful in her suggestions, and always appreciate her input. And the policy team at Chamber in general is totally on top of their game, and has been a great partner on everything that we've tried to move forward on. So it's been great working with you guys, and I appreciate you hosting this conversation.
Of course. Thank you so much for your time, Sharky, and everyone. Thank you for attending and your great questions. Up on your screen, you can see some of our upcoming chamber events. We have quite a few on the docket already. We have a Zoom room with Josh, our next event on the 3rd. On the 11th, we have our first public policy forum of the year. That'll be a telehealth summit, which should be very interesting given that the massive shift we've had to telehealth this year, or last year, I should say. The 17th, we have a City Hall check-in with Tipping Point. This will be around our new homeless initiative as well as Prop C. Friday, February 19th, we have an invitation-only executive coffee break. And March 4th, we have our Bayshop online. I'll also note on March 2nd, we'll be hearing from the High-Speed Rail Committee. So lots of fun events coming up. Make sure to check out our website and register for those. And with that, I'll wrap us. And thank you again, Sharky, for all your time. And thank you, Amelia.
Thank you. And please fill out our survey. Fill out our survey.
Yes.
We'll send it out, Sharky. We'll get it out there.
Yes, we will send that all to everyone.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.